After weeks of road tripping, I successfully drove across Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and finally arrived in Texas. At this point, it's getting pretty hard for me to give you a proper recap, so if you want to know what had happened, feel free to watch the previous episodes. Anyway, in the last video, I had great food in Albuquerque, went to the White Sands National Park, drove to El Paso, and spent a night in a small town called Sonora. If you want to support this channel and to hear the upcoming stories, you can simply subscribe, comment, and like. All of this helps. Back to the story. I had a really good sleep in Sonora and continued my drive to San Antonio the next day. San Antonio was quite special to me. First of all, I was an old-time Spurs fan. Duncan, Popovich, Ginobili, Parker, those people are my heroes. And second of all, my beloved Citibank sent me a statement every month from here. And I was always curious about this address in San Antonio. So it was pretty exciting for me to finally be able to see my bank with my own eyes. The drive to San Antonio was not bad, and on the way there, it was hard not to be impressed by those amazing clouds. It was the kind of cloud that only exists in my dreams. My Airbnb host had been very kind to me, and when the rain was pouring outside, her puppy always made sure I was not alone. And when it was sunny outside, I would spend the whole day sightseeing. I signed up for the San Antonio River Walk, learned the city history, learned the Battle of Alamo, and had a great time listening to this fantastic accent.
Pioneers, cowboys, and settlers to go through with no troubles at all.
Later that day, I went to Spurs AT&T Center to complete my pilgrimage as a good Spurs fan. Even though I knew the stadium was turned into a temporary hospital at the time and didn't allow any fans to go inside, I still chose to go because it was more than enough for me to look at it from afar. Being able to see where my heroes had once battled meant a lot to me. On the next day, Citibank San Antonio was off my bucket list as well. The office was once again closed due to the pandemic, but by the same token, I got to experience this huge complex all by myself. A long-time wish had been fulfilled satisfyingly. I was very excited and prayed for another year of good fortune. I went to Dimini State Park, saw this Korean pavilion and some cute ducklings, went hiking in Comanche Lookout and saw this cool-looking stone tower with a couple of crows on it, drove to Woodlawn Lake Park and wrapped up my time in San Antonio with this beautiful lighthouse. To me, San Antonio was full of trees, huge lakes, gorgeous houses, and surprises. It is rich in history and packed with kind people. Oh, I almost forgot to mention how delicious and inexpensive the food was. A meal like this costed $13. A chicken soup combo like this costed only $8.25. The taste was simply beyond my imagination. San Antonio, I can't wait to go back to you. Austin was only 1 hour away from San Antonio, yet it felt like an entirely different region. It was more tropical to me. I spent a whole day just walking around Lady Bird Lake and was amazed by the amount of people I saw there. I mean, this was during the first year of pandemic, and the park was packed with people. Men, women, young and old. None of them gave a single F about this COVID thing. Honestly, I was quite touched by these fearless Austin people, because they certainly knew what matters more, get busy living or get busy dying. To my surprise, there was even a jumping platform just for the dogs. I was over the moon looking at all these lovely fellas jumping into the lake again and again, one after another. It was such a lovely experience. On the next day, I went to downtown Austin, saw the state capitol, a bunch of soldiers, an old guy with a sign saying globalism is dead, which is something I totally agree with. A donut store that sold donuts with strange names such as Old Dirty Bastard. I wonder what that one tastes like. By the way, it was around the time when George Floyd was killed by the police, so most of the stores on the streets were sealed with plywood. But Austin people somehow turned those boring-looking plywood into arts. When I was in Austin, I thought of Bangkok all the time. The wide river, the damp air, the untimely rain, and the temperature all reminded me of Bangkok. It made me a bit sad actually, because I really missed Bangkok. So I decided to have some pho for dinner. It was delicious and brought me back to Southeastern Asia briefly. The next day, Austin rained heavily. I hiked to a mountaintop and said goodbye to Austin. Dallas was 3 hours north of Austin, a sunnier and less humid city. On November 22, 1963, John F. Kennedy was assassinated here. I went to the JFK Memorial and the spot where he was shot at the age of 46. I really think people should learn to cherish life more before it is too late, because we never know which comes first, accidents or tomorrow. Later that day, I went to a lake and spent the rest of the day thinking, working, and flying my drone. After having too much awesome Mexican and Texan food, I decided to regress to my Asian roots a little bit. I went to a Korean restaurant for my last meal in Dallas. The moment I put that kimchi in my mouth, my soul simply abandoned my body and flew back to Asia. I guess that's the definition of so crushingly tasty. I drove to Houston the next day. It was about 4 hours drive south of Dallas, and it was the first time I see Gulf of Mexico in 3 years. It felt great being in a coastal city again. I could smell the ocean the moment I stepped out of my car, and I really liked that. Of course, the first thing I did was to rush to the ocean side and took a long look at the Gulf of Mexico. It was vast and glorious. In the past, I had been to the Miami and Cancun side of the Gulf, but never the Houston side. Houston also offered me beautiful parks and museums. I went to the Museum of Fine Arts and enjoyed it immensely. No need to talk to anyone and just completely immerse myself with those timeless objects in the darkness. I loved how that felt. After that, I went to the nearby Herman Park, walking and relaxing. Gotta say, Houston was blessed with abundant water and green trees, and I was very surprised when I found a Japanese garden within that park. It resembled the tea houses I saw in Kyoto so much that I couldn't tell the difference. Also, I didn't dine out at all while I was in Houston. Partly it was because I kinda missed my own cooking. I'm actually not a terrible cook. And partly it was because the room I had in Houston was incredible. It looked like this, and I felt like I was living in a theater the entire time, which was actually one of my childhood dreams. As a result, I watched one episode after another, one show after another, and didn't want to leave the house for food at all. Before leaving Houston, I made a quick layover at Toyota Center. Even though Yao Ming no longer played here, it still felt incredible to see the place where he had worked for 8 years. And just like that, I said goodbye to Texas. This huge, diverse, and lovely state had been very nice to me. Thanks a lot. Alright, I should probably stop this part of the story here. The next one will cover my adventures in Louisiana. Thank you for watching. If you want to support this channel, subscribe, comment, and like. It would be very helpful. If you have any questions, you can either leave a comment or hit me up on my Instagram at JingWuShow. The next part will be out as soon as possible.